タイヤ12台乗ってバイクバスに入場してで来たんですよ。
One day, 12 hired cars pulled up. Out stepped a group of hired thugs. They made sure we saw that they had knives and guns.
それからピストルをねポケットにこう入れて誰か一番中心のやつ前に出れと。
Then they asked for the leader of the picket line.
その時にピケ隊の人も
The workers were getting scared, so I got them singing labor songs.
全部スクランブルして労働歌を歌わせたんですよ。
The thugs left, but about 2 minutes later, a worker from the south gate roared up on his motorcycle. He was screaming, "Kubo-san has been stabbed." By the time I got there, all I saw was my friend Kubo-san being carried off to the hospital. Even today, when I hear the word Mitsui, my heart swells with hatred. Back then, everyone, husbands and wives, children and adults, felt the same way. It was that hatred that sustained us throughout the fight.
By July of 1960, Miike was a national crisis. The Japanese government sent 15,000 members of the National Police Force, 10% of the country's total, to force the Union away from the mine. Sympathetic Japanese unions responded by sending in over 15,000 workers. The government was nervous about a possible bloodbath. 10 months after the strike had begun, the government persuaded Mitsui and the Miike Union to accept binding arbitration. The Central Labor Relations Board ruled in favor of Mitsui. The miners lost their strike at Miike, but their ability to wage such a long battle left its mark on Japan. Seeing the bitterness of workers as a threat to the future, Japan's largest companies made one crucial concession to workers.
組合が解雇絶対反対という闘争をしました。で、解雇反対ですから。
The unions won an end to arbitrary layoffs. Management did all it could to prevent layoffs in order to have a more satisfied workforce.
いうことになって。
Gradually, Japan's major industries adopted a policy of so-called lifetime employment.
Job security bought labor peace and stability for Japan's largest companies, the second pillar of Japan Inc. But to move forward, the government needed to unify the Japanese people. That was hard, for old political wounds still divided the nation. In angry speeches made during the election campaign of November 1960, the leader of the socialists, Inejiro Asanuma, warned that the specter of pre-war Japan still haunted the nation. His vision was tragically real. Asanuma died moments later. His assassination by a right-wing fanatic stunned the nation. It was a terrifying climax to a year filled with bitter conflict. As 1960 ended, the battle-weary Japanese looked for someone to heal the wounds of the nation. The man who emerged was not a man of business or a man of politics. He came from the most critical division of Japan Inc., the economic bureaucracy. His name was Hayato Ikeda.
He was a bureaucrat rather than a politician. He came out of the finance ministry. He dealt with practical problems and practical solutions. No wonder when he came to France that de Gaulle, after meeting him, was so unimpressed and said, "Who was that transistor salesman?" Well, de Gaulle didn't realize it, but that's exactly what Ikeda was. He came to sell transistors. He came to preside over the transformation of the Japanese economy.
Ikeda set a simple goal for everyone: double your income. It was a catchy phrase that became a kind of sunny national anthem. They called it Akarui Sekatsu, a bright new life. As Japanese industry churned out new products and kept people working, consumers bought their way to a new prosperity. There were three items every family had to have, the three treasures: a refrigerator, a washing machine, and a TV set. As Japan grew, many Americans assumed that the Japanese economy was dancing to an American beat.
Viewed from the outside, Japan looked like an imitation of the U.S. But in point of fact, Japan was evolving toward a very, very different economic and political pattern. The name of the game was capitalism, but Japan and the United States were playing by a very, very different set of rules.
No one knows the rules of the game better than Takeshi Isayama. For decades, men like Isayama have guided the Japanese economy on behalf of MITI, the Ministry of International Trade and Industry. At this corporate baseball tournament, Isayama is the guest of honor, a sign of a special reverence for government bureaucrats not found in America. In the United States, the government is like an umpire, making sure business plays by the rules. But in Japan, the government is on the field, coaching industry. Big business and government are on the same team.
People in Japan expect certain things of the Japanese government, of the central bureaucracy. Actually, there's quite a high expectation that they will be defending the national interest. And I think in the post-war period, that has been defined primarily as promoting Japan's economic development.
Like most Japanese bureaucrats, Isayama's crowded bullpen office does not reflect the prestige of his position. He heads the division of MITI that oversees the global development of Japan's latest high technology. Day after day, Isayama hears about the problems facing Japanese corporations. Then he writes the laws that govern industry. Isayama also offers special incentives to help companies develop new technology.
適切なガイダンスを与えられるだけのその知的な MITI's job is to guide the development of Japan's future. If a certain segment of industry wants to go one way and another wants to go another way, the conflict will be destructive. It is MITI's job to mediate and choose the best road for all.
Today, the businessmen who come to see Isayama are wealthy and powerful. He must use the gentle art of persuasion to advance MITI's goals. But 30 years ago, MITI was the commander-in-chief of the Japanese economy. It gave the orders, and companies obeyed.
Japan was a developing nation, and in order to catch up to the other nations economically, it was necessary for some degree of protection, financial support, and regulations. These were the primary responsibilities of MITI.
MITI funneled Japan's scarce resources to key industries. In 1957, MITI decided Japan's future depended on electronics. MITI favored Japan's big pre-war companies like Toshiba, Hitachi, and Matsushita. Little companies had a harder time. In the 1950s, Akio Morita helped to found a small tape recorder company that would become Sony. He wanted to buy a new American invention called the transistor, but he needed permission from MITI.
When we applied MITI, our government did not think Sony has a appropriate engineering power. So they delayed their approval. So it took more than 6 months to get the final approval to send the money.
When MITI gave permission, Sony bought the transistor license for $25,000. A year later, Sony produced the first transistor radios made in Japan.
Sing, 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 everybody start to sing. La-di-da, hooty-hoo, now you're singing with a swing. Sing, 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 sing.
Through private initiative and government guidance, the Japanese electronics industry grew at a furious pace.
When the music all around, everybody goes to town. It's something you should know. Oh, oh, baby, oh, yes, sing, sing.
But high-speed growth put Japan on a collision course with the United States and an American institution, television.
Well, it means... Excuse me. It means that you see virtually everything the TV camera sees and transmits. There's more picture.
Television was an American invention. In 1955, there were 27 U.S. TV producers with familiar names like RCA, General Electric, and Zenith. Now there's only one. In 1955, there were 10 Japanese TV companies.
Sony! Sony! Sony!
Today, all 10 are still in business. The story of TV is the story of the collision of two economic systems. In the U.S., American companies were on their own. In Japan, companies often worked together and were protected and guided by the government.
Thank you.